On September 11, 2001, the United States and the world witnessed a series of horrific events that millions will never forget. This was not only a dark day in U.S. history, but also a turning point globally in the fight against terrorism. The event, commonly known as 9/11s, began early in the morning when 4 commercial airplanes from the northeastern United States were hijacked by 19 terrorists from the extremist Islamic group Al-Qaeda. The first 2 planes, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, crashed directly into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center in New York, turning these iconic structures into rubble in less than 2 hours. The images of the collapsing towers shocked the world and paralyzed New York City, the financial and cultural hub of the United States. The third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the western side of the Pentagon, symbolizing U.S. military power, causing partial collapse of the building. The fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, failed to reach its intended target thanks to the bravery of passengers who fought the hijackers, causing the plane to crash into a field in Pennsylvania. Subsequent investigations determined that Flight 93's target might have been the White House or the Capitol, symbols of U.S. democracy. Immediately following the attacks, all suspicion fell on Al-Qaeda, and the U.S. government quickly responded by launching a global war on terrorism. This led to the war in Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban regime, which was harboring Al-Qaeda and its leader, Osama bin Laden. Nations worldwide also enacted new laws to enhance the powers of law enforcement and intelligence agencies, aiming to prevent similar attacks in the future. Although Osama bin Laden initially denied any involvement, he officially claimed responsibility for the attacks in 2004. Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda stated that the main reasons for the attacks were U.S. support for Israel, the presence of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, and economic sanctions against Iraq. The aftermath of the attacks was not only marked by loss of life, but also by massive economic, psychological, and social damage. The collapse of the World Trade Center not only paralyzed New York's economy, but also led to a global economic downturn. U.S. and Canadian airspace was closed for 3 days, and stock market activity was halted until September 17th. Memorials and strict security measures were implemented worldwide to address concerns about further attacks. The cleanup of the World Trade Center site continued until May 2002, and the Pentagon was restored within a year. The attacks resulted in 2,977 deaths, over 25,000 injuries, and infrastructure and property damage estimated at least $10 billion. It remains the deadliest terrorist attack in human history, and the event that caused the most deaths among firefighters and law enforcement officers in U.S. history. In the years following, many memorials were erected to honor the innocent victims of 9/11s, including the 9/11s Memorial and Museum in New York, the Pentagon Memorial in Virginia, and the Flight 93 National Memorial at the crash site in Pennsylvania. The new World Trade Center, featuring One World Trade Center, was rebuilt and opened in November 2014 as a symbol of the resilience and survival of New York City and the American people. In this video, we will delve into the details of this fateful day, the far-reaching consequences it left behind, and how the world has forever changed following the events of 9/11s. So who is Al-Qaeda, and why do they harbor such hatred towards the United States? Al-Qaeda, the notorious terrorist organization, originated in 1979 when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden, a prominent leader of the group, went to Afghanistan to organize and lead Arab Mujahideen groups in the fight against the Afghan communist government and Soviet forces. Under the guidance of Ayman al-Zawahiri, bin Laden became more radical, developing extremist views and shaping the organization's strategy. In 1996, bin Laden issued his first fatwa, calling for U.S. troops to withdraw from Saudi Arabia. In his second fatwa in 1998, bin Laden expressed strong opposition to U.S. policies towards Israel and the U.S. military presence in Saudi Arabia after the Gulf War. Bin Laden encouraged Muslims to attack the U.S. until his grievances were addressed. He used Islamic scriptures to justify jihad as a personal duty if enemies sought to undermine Muslim nations. Regarding Osama bin Laden's background, why did he have the power to lead such a major terrorist organization? Osama bin Laden was born on March 10, 1957, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, into a wealthy Yemeni Muslim family. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, deceased, was the founder of a construction company sponsored by the royal family, leading to substantial wealth. The company's valuable connections allowed them to win lucrative contracts, including the renovation of Islamic holy sites in Mecca and Medina. Mohammed bin Laden had multiple wives and up to 50 children. Osama was the 17th child. Being the son of a secondary wife, Osama likely experienced a lower status within the extended family. He studied business administration and economics at King Abdul Aziz University, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, heavily influenced by devout teachers who introduced him to the broader world of Islam. Bin Laden graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1981. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 marked a turning point in Osama bin Laden's life. He supported the Muslim Jihad against Soviet troops. Notably, the U.S. was the main supporter of Afghanistan at that time, and there were reports that bin Laden was trained by the CIA. Hence, bin Laden's later betrayal of the U.S. can be seen as akin to a sorcerer being overrun by the very forces he had summoned. The U.S., along with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, established Islamic schools in Pakistan for Afghan refugees. These schools eventually became training centers for Muslim fighters. In the mid-1980s, bin Laden moved to Afghanistan, where he founded the Maktab al-Khidmat, MAC, recruiting Muslim fighters from around the world and laying the groundwork for an international Islamic militant network. At that time, MAC had offices in Detroit and Brooklyn, U.S. After the Soviet withdrawal in 1989, bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia and worked in his father's construction company. He established an organization to aid Afghan veterans who gradually became seasoned fighters ready to fight for the cause of Islam. They formed the core of bin Laden's current supporters. In 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. In response, the Saudi government allowed U.S. troops to deploy in their country in preparation for action against Iraq. Bin Laden was enraged by this, believing it allowed unbelievers, U.S. troops, to desecrate the Holy Land of Islam. He also condemned the Saudi government as misguided and deviating from Islam. Due to his anti-government activities, bin Laden was expelled in 1991. He went to Sudan and worked with an Egyptian anti-government group in exile. In 1992, bin Laden claimed responsibility for a plot to bomb U.S. troops in Yemen. The following year, he again took responsibility for an attack on U.S. forces in Somalia. By 1994, under pressure from the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, the Sudanese government was forced to expel bin Laden. He returned to Afghanistan. In 1998, bin Laden declared that all American and Jewish citizens, including children, must die. He effectively declared jihad against the U.S. The West believes that since then, bin Laden has been involved in numerous terrorist attacks, including the bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania on August 7, 1998, which killed 226 people. August 7, 1990, is the date the U.S. deployed troops to Saudi Arabia. U.S. missile strikes on targets in Sudan and Afghanistan in August 1998 had no effect on bin Laden's network. He continued to call for followers to destroy the U.S., Israel, and the Saudi royal family, declaring that until these obstacles were removed, the three holy lands of Islam, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem, would not be liberated. Bin Laden had 4 wives and at least 10 children. Public perception of him is that he was a quiet and humble man, even shy and reluctant to give interviews. While the West continuously condemned bin Laden and nearly his entire family disowned him, he was viewed as a hero by many Muslims worldwide. For them, bin Laden was a brave warrior who dedicated his life and career to Islam. Bin Laden was also persuasive, which explains why he had many followers willing to fight to protect him. His organization, Al-Qaeda, meaning the base, had around 3,000 members. Bin Laden funded Al-Qaeda with his enormous wealth, estimated at $250 million. He represented a new trend in terrorism history: privatization. Before bin Laden, major terrorist organizations often had connections with governments, but with him, using his own funds and dedicated followers, he had the capacity to organize large-scale terrorist attacks. He also did not rule out the use of chemical or nuclear weapons, claiming that protecting Islam was a sacred duty. Another key figure in these events was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the central figures in the 9/11 attacks, admitted his involvement in the attacks in April 2002, along with Ramzi bin al-Shibh. The 9/11 Commission report indicates that Mohammed's hostility towards the U.S. stemmed from violent disagreements with U.S. foreign policy supporting Israel. Mohammed was also involved in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and was the uncle of Ramzi Youssef, the chief bomber in that attack. Mohammed was captured on March 1, 2003, in Rawalpindi, Pakistan, by Pakistani security officials working with the CIA. He was subsequently held in various CIA black sites and Guantanamo Bay, where he was interrogated and tortured using harsh methods. During hearings at Guantanamo Bay in March 2007, Mohammed admitted responsibility for the attacks and claimed he was responsible for the 9/11 campaign from A to Z. A letter presented in the U.S. District Court in Manhattan on July 26, 2019, indicated that Mohammed was interested in testifying against the role of Saudi Arabia in the attacks, but it was uncertain how useful his testimony would be for assisting victims and families. After careful planning, Al-Qaeda decided to attack the United States. Early on September 11, 2001, 19 hijackers took control of 4 commercial airliners, 2 Boeing 757s and 2 Boeing 767s, en route to California. These planes, having taken off from Logan International Airport in Boston, Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey, and Washington Dulles International Airport in Virginia, were chosen by the hijackers because of their long flights and full fuel tanks. The 4 flights included American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767, departing Logan Airport at 7:59 a.m., bound for Los Angeles with 11 crew members and 76 passengers, excluding 5 hijackers. The plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York at 8:46 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175, a Boeing 767, departing Logan Airport at 8:14 a.m., bound for Los Angeles with 9 crew members and 51 passengers, excluding 5 hijackers. The plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center in New York at 9:03 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, departing Washington Dulles International Airport at 8:20 a.m., bound for Los Angeles with 6 crew members and 53 passengers, excluding 5 hijackers. The plane crashed into the Pentagon in Virginia at 9:37 a.m. United Airlines Flight 93, a Boeing 757, departing Newark International Airport at 8:42 a.m., bound for San Francisco, with 7 crew members and 33 passengers, excluding 4 hijackers. After passengers attempted to regain control of the plane, it crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. Regarding the specific events of the attack, on the morning of September 11, 2001, a terrorist attack unfolded with brutal precision. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, controlled by 5 hijackers, crashed into floors 93 to 99 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Just 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175, also controlled by 5 hijackers, crashed into floors 77 to 85 of the South Tower. The collision caused a terrifying explosion and massive smoke plume, shaking the entire city of New York. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the western side of the Pentagon, causing a huge explosion that devastated the area. The plane had flown approximately 600 miles from Washington, D.C. before the crash, and the impact on the Pentagon resulted in the deaths of 125 people, including many military personnel and civilians. At the same time, the 4th plane, United Airlines Flight 93, controlled by 4 hijackers, crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. Passengers, upon learning about the attacks via phone, decided to resist. Data from the cockpit revealed a dramatic struggle for control of the plane, with passengers trying to regain control. Realizing they could not maintain control, the hijackers caused the plane to crash in freefall to prevent it from being used as a weapon against other targets such as the Capitol or the White House. At the World Trade Center towers, the situation became even more catastrophic. After the collisions, the towers caught fire intensely. The South Tower, hit by Flight 175, began to collapse at 9:59 a.m. after burning for 56 minutes. Smoke and fire continued to billow, making rescue efforts futile. The North Tower, impacted by Flight 11, remained standing for another 102 minutes before collapsing at 10:28 a.m., creating a massive dust cloud that covered the area. Debris from the North Tower damaged World Trade Center Building 7, causing a major fire and leading to its collapse at 5:21 p.m. The west side of the Pentagon was also severely damaged, causing significant damage to this critical military facility. At 9:42 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, ordered a nationwide ban on all civilian flights over the United States. Aircraft in the air were instructed to land immediately, and all international flights were barred from landing in the U.S. for 3 days. The situation became chaotic, with false reports of a bomb at the State Department and suspicions about another plane, Delta Airlines Flight 1989, thought to be hijacked. Fortunately, this flight landed safely in Cleveland, Ohio. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shib, the organizers of the attacks, later revealed that the original target of Flight 93 might have been the Capitol rather than the White House. They also mentioned that al-Qaeda had considered other targets such as nuclear facilities, but abandoned those plans due to concerns that the situation could spiral out of control. Regarding casualties and consequences, the attack resulted in the deaths of 2,996 people and injuries to over 6,000 individuals. Among them were 265 people on the flights, 2,606 people in the World Trade Center and surrounding areas, and 125 people at the Pentagon. The majority of the casualties were civilians, including 343 firefighters, 72 law enforcement officers, and 55 military personnel. New Jersey was the state with the second highest number of casualties, and Hoboken had the highest number of deaths in the attack. In New York, more than 90% of the fatalities in the two towers were working or visiting the floors that were hit or higher. At least 200 people died from jumping or falling from the towers, while a total of 411 rescue workers perished trying to rescue and extinguish the fires. Cantor Fitzgerald LP was the company most heavily affected with 658 employees killed, while Marsh Inc. lost 358 employees and Aon Corporation lost 175 employees. Impact of the event on the United States. After the September 11th attacks, the U.S. government quickly blamed the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda as the main perpetrator. Al-Qaeda, under the leadership of Osama bin Laden, had previously admitted to carrying out several attacks on U.S. military and civilian targets, but bin Laden denied any direct involvement in the September 11th events. Although bin Laden had declared jihad against the U.S., he did not acknowledge prior knowledge of or participation in the attack. Following an investigation, the U.S. government identified Al-Qaeda and bin Laden as responsible for the attack. In November 2001, U.S. forces discovered a videotape in a destroyed house in Jalalabad, Afghanistan. In the video, bin Laden admitted to planning the attack. However, many in the Muslim community expressed doubts about the authenticity of the tape, with some suggesting it might be a propaganda stunt by the U.S. government. The tape was widely broadcast in December 2001. Osama bin Laden had varied reactions after the attack. On September 16, 2001, he made a statement via Al Jazeera, denying any involvement and asserting that the attack was not carried out by him. He claimed that Islam forbids harming women, children, and innocent people. However, in November 2004, bin Laden publicly acknowledged Al-Qaeda's responsibility for the attack, explaining that the motive was to restore freedom for the people and punish the aggressor. On September 27, 2001, the FBI released images and information about 19 hijacking suspects, most of whom were from Saudi Arabia, with some from the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Lebanon. These suspects were all adults and educated, differing from the typical profile of suicide bombers. According to the 9/11's Commission report on June 22, 2004, the attack was planned and carried out by Al-Qaeda operatives. The Commission stated that Al-Qaeda spent approximately $500,000 on the attack, but the source of the funds has not been verified. Regarding the causes of the terrorism, according to the U.S. government, the September 11th attacks align with the mission that Al-Qaeda self-identifies with. Al-Qaeda had been suspected of involvement in the bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, as well as the attack on the USS Coal Destroyer in Yemen in 2000. The U.S. believes that the attack was part of bin Laden's plan to kill Americans anywhere in the world, based on a fatwa issued in 1998 by bin Laden and his associates. This fatwa criticized the U.S. for exploiting resources, political interference, supporting oppressive regimes, and violating Islamic countries. It accused the U.S. of creating discord among Islamic nations and supporting Israel in its conflict with Palestine. U.S. military actions in Iraq and sanctions against the country were seen as evidence supporting the fatwa's accusations. Some analyses suggest that al-Qaeda's main motive was to encourage Islamic solidarity by focusing on a common enemy, thereby paving the way for the establishment of a new world order based on extreme Islamic views. According to the 9/11's Commission, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, considered the mastermind of the attack, was motivated by disagreement with U.S. foreign policy supporting Israel. Mohammed Atta, the hijacker who piloted the plane into the World Trade Center towers, also believed that the U.S. aimed to protect Israel. The September 11, 2001 attacks were not only a dark day in world history, but also a pivotal moment, opening new chapters in discussions and analyses about terrorism, politics, and global security. Organized by al-Qaeda, the attacks resulted in thousands of deaths and caused tremendous material and emotional losses. The international community's response, efforts to protect and rebuild the U.S., and extensive changes in global security policies and strategies reflect the profound impact of this event. However, the September 11th attacks are not only a story of destruction, but also a lesson in unity and the strength of the human spirit during difficult times. From international solidarity and the compassion of diverse communities to the resolve to protect freedom and security, this event has left a deep imprint on each individual's mind. We hope that through this video you have gained a clearer understanding of one of the most significant events of the 21st century. Join us as we continue to explore and uncover untold stories and lessons yet to be learned. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss future videos from Uncovering the Case. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next videos.